Yes, my darling.
Hello. Hi, how are you? No, don't be. No, no, I'm only working. I'm only working, that's fine. Deadline. Um, would you like to come over? Cool. Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah. I'm just on my way down to the shop now to get one. And I have to pick up a few bits, so 20 minutes? Bye. Okay, have a nice bye. you. Bye.
Rain with parts of the west and south worst affected. Uno Hagan has the news in detail.
Good evening, newsroom. We have more news very little present. First and breaking news from Chanticleer that 2 bodies have been discovered in Kilmaley following a double murder in the area. Gardaí are appealing to locals to remain in their homes. Killer may still be in the area. For more on this, now join a West correspondent Jim Bradley.
Where are you? Hurry. I think there's someone in here. I think there's someone in the house. Hurry! Hurry! I think there's someone. Hurry! Dun dun! Dun dun dun!
Good evening and welcome to 6-1, the headline.
This is only temporary, so don't get too comfortable.
Cork, Waterford, Tralee, Dublin, East Coast, West Coast, North Coast, Clare, Doonbeg, the Irish Sea Coast, and St. George's Channel. But first, more headlines with Brian.
And following those floods, there's a drought in the Iron Islands.
Yes, local commuters and boat areas have said that they cannot no longer reach the main peninsulas on the west coast as there is a shortage of water.
First there was swine flu, then there was pig flu, now there's donkey flu, chicken flu, Alabama swine flu, Alabama 3, Alabama 4, and Alabama 5 flu. What next? We'll go have our in-forks report. with our health correspondent, Fergal Bowers. Fergal.
Yes, indeed, we are hearing right across the major countries of the Western Front that there are indeed, in fact, many diagnoses to come, and doctors are saying that across the borders of the main hospitals we are finding that people are not just dying from swine flu, but also those most in need of help and indeed in need of care are not getting it.
And Fergal, we had a report earlier on this week from McDonald's saying that McDonald's food was actually the cause for not only swine flu, bird flu, H5N1, H5N1, 111, 222, 223, Alabama 4, but also the floods.
Well, yes indeed, Brian. There are many reports that are out that would suggest that, in fact, it would get down to consumer choice, along with McDonald's, as 1/3 of people are actually now part of the McDonald's chain, as McDonald's itself incorporates 1/3 of all greenhouse gases and deforestation in the Amazon. That in mind, Brian, stay with me as I try to explain to you how 1 in every 3 people are in fact the McDonald's clone.
I just hold you right there, Fergal, because we actually have our industry and employment correspondent, Ingrid Miley, standing by. Ingrid, what about these statistics from McDonald's that they're in fact employing 1/3 of the country, more or less? What can you tell us? What have you been hearing from government buildings?
Yes, well, as you know, McDonald's are a huge multinational global corporation, and really they are expanding at the rate of as quick as people are being produced on the earth.
Exponentially, in fact.
Yes.
According to government statistics, there's 1 McDonald's employee being born every 3 seconds.
Just as many number of outlets are also being produced at the same time. In this country alone, we have seen 1 in every of the major towns, and we can expect more. And not only that, since the 1970s, McDonald's have been accounting for 1 in every 4 meals served to children, so that will show you the extent of McDonald's pull on the younger generation and their expanding body sizes. That
Indeed, Ingrid. And I was just wondering, what does Fergal Bowers have to say about this? Fergal, we'll go back to you for a second. Ingrid, you stay on the line. Fergal, what of this statistic, if you will, of 1 in 3 employees?
Well, as you can see, we've had the floods that have devastated the country as of recent low-lying floodplains. These low-lying floodplains have been built on by McDonald's. McDonald's have effectively pushed the barriers of the low-lying floodplains right across the border and indeed on to another area where it has all gone down this morning.
I'll just go back to you, Ingrid, for a second. Ingrid, over in the Aran Islands there, we're hearing about this drought, this supposed drought, if you will, this cataclysmic drought, as it's being called by the Aran Islands News. And I was just wondering, has that anything got to do with McDonald's?
Well, there is a direct correlation between the lack of McDonald's out there and
the drought, is
the
it?
drought.
Indeed.
So what we are saying to our companions on the West Coast Islands is that, yes, indeed they are suffering from a drought, but that is the least of their problems, considering that they don't have McDonald's as of yet.
I would like to bring in Emma O'Kelly here at this point. Just, Emma, you're standing outside government buildings for no reason at all, just because it looks good. But I want you to come in here on this debate, if you will, and tell me what you think about McDonald's, the Aran Islands, the floods, and of course swine flu.
Well, the Department of Education has a lot to say on it, and the Minister for Education will no doubt be writing some form of script to the national newspapers, where he has come under high criticism, and not only with his budget for the Aran Islands education cuts. In relation to McDonald's and the floods, yes, the science adds up for the Department of Science, that the statistics and the mathematics would basically say that, yeah, it is the little clown of McDonald's who has indeed caused the cracks in society that we're suffering from. And no doubt the government will publish a paper on it, but it is
Very good, Emma
unlikely
Kelly.
that some...
Emma Kelly, very good. Emma, good. Very good. Very good, Emma Kelly. We'll leave it there. Sharon.
In other breaking news, across the county and the country, it is likely that the ESB will find themselves under high criticism from the EU initiative government schemes to reduce and renew and reuse carbon footprints created by the PFOG of North and South Mayo. In an interview with Brian Dobson on this programme, and before we came live on air, the director of Board of PFOG said that he would try to have a greener future for the bogs, for the peatlands, and indeed for all concerned in the nature industries that are cutting the bogs. Brian.
Now we'll return to some breaking news that's just broke. Mary Harney's obesity. We're hearing stories that there being an inquiry of a tribunal of inquiry funded by the central government into Mary Harney's obesity. Sharon, what can you tell us about that inquiry into Mary Harney's obesity?
Well, as you know, Brian, the HSE has come under criticism in the last few moments and in the last few months over its STI program. Now, Mary Harney being, of course, the Minister for Health in conjunction with Professor Brendan Rumbeat, have stated that the swine flu, the STDs, the HSEs, the boards of what were formerly known as the health boards have all come under increasing pressure to find a cure for all concerned.
And what then about the levels of obesity within government and how it has tsunamied, if you will, in recent weeks? All we have to do is look at Brian Cowan, for example. Brian Cowan, as we all know, is clinically obese. Mary Harney, clinically obese. We look across the aisles over to the opposition ranks. We can see Pat Roberts, clinically obese. Sharon, what's the tribunal of inquiry going to do about those levels of obesity?
Well, Brian, to quote a famous comedian, it is a big problem.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we'll take a break. Still to come, Ivan has all the sports news. Ivan?
Yes, Brian, as we sit here discussing the events that have surrounded the last week of floods, that have surrounded the coming days, and that have surrounded the future. Brian.
Thank you, Sharon, for that very eloquent introduction. So, for more on these floods surrounding the country, surrounding us, surrounding the news, surrounding the papers, surrounding everything, it's all around us, really, to begin with. So for more on these floods, we're joined by absolutely everyone we know. They're all here via video link, by the brilliance of technology. First we'll go live to... No, we've actually lost the video link to everyone. So it's just me, it's just you, Sharon. Back to you, Sharon.
Well, Brian, in the discussion that has taken place, we must remember to discuss the coming events of the 5 minutes and 47 seconds that we have left of broadcasting time.
That's very true, Sharon. And even though it's 5 minutes and now 38 seconds, we will have time to talk about the wider range of issues regarding Irish life today and how the Celtic tiger is now dead and gone, much like the dodo, much like the woolly mammoth, much like the Neanderthal. It's extinct. Was it ever really there? Was it? We ask these questions and more. Sharon?
Well, Brian, it is a reoccurring theme in Irish daily life of the struggle and the man on the street, the pint of milk, the cost of living, the cost of talking about the cost of living.
The cost of the exchequer, the cost of living, and the cost of talking about the cost of living. What's that cost the government? You can phone us on 1850 60 40 40 50 or email us at www.wedon'treallycare.ie. And of course, we're also available on Twitter. Get that by our Facebook page, which is www.facebook.http.ie/yourviews.
Yes, Brian. And log on, log off.
From the brink, we have been reported for the last 3 days live from Cork down to floods. We're now back safe and dry in the studio. Sharon.
Sometimes I feel there's a hole inside of me.
A dry night in the studio here, but outside, as we have seen, it is raining. The rains continue to rain late into the evening and early into the morning. We are forecasting that the economic climate also will rain down on the Irish government hard in this new budget proposed to cut measures and cut spending and cut resources pretty much. As the floods continue, we are flooded with calls from local hoteliers who say that the influx to their hotels is unfolding at a very steady pace. Brian, it's over to you.
Indeed, Sharon, we've heard from hoteliers from around the country who are struggling to cope with the influx of people into their hotels. People devastated by the floods, people devastated by the economic climate, people devastated by the changing global climate. Indeed, people from all over the world somehow landed here in Ireland trying to escape this global crisis. For more on this, we're joined live in the studio. Unfortunately, no, we're not joined live in the studio. That link is gone. Back to you, Sharon.
Yes, well, Brian, we are hearing reports earlier on, even though our studio links are all at a communications loggerheads with our producers on this programme. But earlier on, before we came on air, we did speak to the ministers involved and the county council workers involved and all those picking up the pieces from the floods. We spoke to one person in Cork who said she couldn't get her children out of the house in time as they were indeed watching the X Factor and refused to leave until they found out whether or not Cheryl Tweed, formerly known Cheryl Cole, was wearing her wedding ring. It's back to you, Brian.
Indeed, Sharon, we've heard reports of several deaths in Cork following people refusing to leave their homes to see the X Factor results on Sunday night. Many of these people got stranded in their homes, refusing to leave, refusing to turn off the televisions, refusing to get outside and escape the floods. As the water came in through their doorsteps, we heard reports of several people still cheering on John Edward, also known as Jedward. Sharon?
Yes, Brian, thank you for that report. It is true. We are getting a report in from the Departments of Health and Children and Science and Education, along with the Department of the Environment, telling people in their homes that if their house was built in the last 10 years, that they are more likely to be at risk as of the fact that they are built on low-lying areas, and not just built on low-lying areas, but poor workmanship went in as the houses were put up in haste during the boom years. We are being told that the Department of Health and Children has issued a notice to tell those affected by the mortgage crisis and the bank crisis and the flood crisis to leave and evacuate their homes, move in with their parents and find an alternative means and possibly sell their homes.
As we mentioned earlier on in the bulletin, we were meant to join a press conference for Minister for Environment John Gormley. Unfortunately, he has now been stuck in a flood somewhere, I believe, in County Galway. We were going to go to Kinvara. Unfortunately, a reporter was washed away. Jim Fahey is now somewhere believed mid-Atlantic. Sharon?
Thank you, Brian. And moving on now to international news across the border. In the north, we have seen how the destruction of the floods continues.
And of course, Sharon, what people don't realise is that first we have this swine flu pandemic, if you will. Then, of course, we had this global economic collapse, and now the floods. What next, Sharon? How much more can people of Ireland take?
Well, Brian, the floods, although an unprecedented event, are set to continue. We have spoken to our climatologist and our dermatologist and our destructionologist, who says that given the recent influx of the raindrops, that there is more to come.
Indeed, Sharon, we've counted several raindrops outside the studio, and indeed several leaks inside the studio also, with rain actually getting inside the studio. Sharon, what do the heads of RTÉ have to say about this?
Well, as you can see, Brian, this is a new building built within the last 10 years, and as the Department of the Environment has said, any building built in the last 10 years is at high risk.
And of course, following those floods and heavy rain last night, the millennium spike in Dublin has blown over and killed several people on O'Connell Street. Sharon, what more can you tell us about the unfortunate deaths on O'Connell Street? Although we have to tell viewers they were Dublin people. So.
Well, Brian, as you know, as you said, our reports are coming in that it is 7 people killed from the spike, one on top of another, on top, going through them, beginning in the back, coming out through the tummy. It is, as we say, a very horrific,
Devastating scenes on O'Connell Street in Dublin.
Yes, devastating scenes on O'Connell Street in Dublin. And now, to entertainment news.
Finally, this evening, knock knock, who's there? The Virgin Mary, it appears. Yet again, the Virgin Mary has appeared at Knock Shrine. This following, of course, the devastating floods, high winds, economic collapse, swine flu, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, everything that's happened so far. People have flocked to Knock to see the Virgin Mary. We're going to go live to our northeastern correspondent. I think she's standing by. No, we've also lost her video link, unfortunately. We'll try and get back to Knock later in the bulletin. Sharon.
Thank you, Brian. And the Aztec and the Irish shares seem to be down, all touching down, all falling down, all coming down. Our long-time, lifelong friend, Brian Dobson. Brian, you've been a friend to the news for many years, and now with your new programme and your new book out, I'm not trying to plug your new book or anything now, Brian, it just comes to mind here in front of me. I'm reading reports that you are set to continue and your contract has been renewed with RTE.
That's correct, Sharon. My contract's been renewed for another year. With my book coming out and going to see how the sales progress, and if it sells well, then I might just leave RTE and maybe take a leaf out of George Lee's book and go into politics. If it doesn't sell at all, I will remain here on 6-1 News. Sharon.
Brian speaking beside me there. Okay, 2 other news. We are moving on now, and we are finding that we are having reports coming in from the Middle East as to countries being bombed left, right and centre by the American administration. We are hearing reports that hundreds and thousands have been left homeless, and women and children have found themselves fatherless for Christmas as the war in the Middle East, the war on terror as it's called, is set to continue. Brian.
Indeed, Sharon. The Bush administration has come out this morning saying that they're going to attack any country that doesn't have Christmas celebrations this year, any country that doesn't have Father Christmas in their catalogue of events for December. The Bush administration, of course, running out of excuses to go to war with different countries, now coming up with this latest excuse of Father Christmas and Santa Claus. Sharon?
That's right. And in China, they are set to continue with communism, although the borders have been opened by the British and the American government, and they have launched satellites and televisions, and there is very little communism left. Although
in Sharon, we've heard reports from around the globe, from our latest report from Margaret Ward, that the amount of people who are converting to communism has now actually outweighed the amount of people converting to Buddhism, Hinduism and Deism, but yet people aren't associating themselves with communism per se. Sharon, what does this mean for people around the globe, that they feel they're communist but they won't tell people that they're communist? What does this entail?
Well, it is a commonality among communists to find a common goal, and on the common ground that they have in the eastern countries, they find it very difficult as the days roll on and the time continues. They find that Coca-Cola and the major industries like Adidas and Fila are all trying to feel them out. They want so badly, so desperately and so needingly to exploit that market, to find ways in and have lower pays as their dollar is weakening and the euro is even less.
And of course, Sharon, we're getting reports here at home of this new wave of communism, this Ross communism that's sweeping through the country. Sharon, what more can you tell us about this Ross communism?
Well, the Ross communism, was set up by the people of Boyle, who were told that they had to boil their water.
Following the floods, as people of Cork have been told. And we're now going down to Cork, I think, where we've heard reports of... Sharon, this is a devastating report altogether. reports of obese people being used as sandbags to stop rivers bursting their banks. Sharon, what more can you tell us about this report from Cork about obese people being used to sandbag rivers?
Well, Brian, this is not a comedy. This is true. And as I spoke earlier before we came on air on this programme before with the county council workers there, who explained to me that sandbags are not only permeable, but that the sand is taken from the coast, which is of no good at all, because then you'll still have the water exploiting the coast and coming in. So what with obese people being just the perfect size for doorways, being just the perfect size for land banks, and being just the perfect size to stop the rising flood, it makes perfect sense.
And of course, McDonald's has come out with this controversial new plan whereby newborn babies are going to be intravenously fed their food to make them obese just after birth, so speeding up the process of childhood obesity, getting them as soon as they're born. Sharon, what more can you tell us about this?
Yes,
We've heard reports from Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital in Dublin, I believe.
Yes, this is a growing trend among the marketers. It's called Mac Baby now. The Mac Baby produces a list of food sold in its stores. It wants to capture the market of the newborn right up to the old age. So what McDonald's have said time and time again is that they want everyone to join in the Mac Baby to the Mac elderly. They want them all. They want to see people enjoying a Sunday dinner in McDonald's. So the only way to do it is to grind up the burger and put it in a bar.
Of course, I've had reports of McDonald's floating their takeaway restaurants down to Cork and down to other areas affected by the floods. Sharon, what can you tell us about these floating McDonald's restaurants?
Well, they're following the tide. They're following the tide. They're following the current trends, and they have put themselves on tankers and on ships and on dredgers. And they are now introducing fish as they realise that there's a lot of dead fish out there. So fish will be on the menu from now on.
And there we'll take a break, but coming up we'll have the financial news still to come.
Still to come on the financial news, the finances found one with Brian.
Dun 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 dun. Good evening and welcome to 6-1. The headlines this lunchtime. As the Rossport 5 becomes the Rossport 55,000, as hundreds of thousands of hippies indeed arrive down to North Mayo to take over the Shell complex there in a bid to ease the financial crisis on the government. Also, McDonald's have begun floating on the stock market as well as floating down in Cork. Sharon has the rest of today's headlines. Sharon.
Thank you, Brian. Later on in the programme, we will be discussing the interviews we've recorded and soundbited during the day. In other news, across the country, fear has dogged the land as there seems to be some sort of cat and mouse game between not only just the governments of our time, but the governments of our future.
That's very true, Sharon. This story relates not only to the governments past, present and the future, but also to that big scandal we heard about there in the last few minutes about government backbenchers demanding more backbenches. Sharon, what can you tell us about this backbench scandal?
Government backbenchers are demanding more backbenches. As you can imagine, Brian, benches that are flat, dull and boring, pretty much like a politician themselves. And the politicians of the backbenchers in the Dáil have come out and said they want more benches to be put back in the Dáil.
We heard earlier on for our correspondent Dave McCullough, who's had absolutely nothing to say about it that was relevant to the issue. He kept talking about NAMA. As we all know, we're sick of talking about NAMA. So we're going to continue talking about the backbenches, which we find a lot more interesting. Sharon?
Well, David Davenpower has been talking to us earlier live on the programme at the moment, and he has said that the best way forward for the backbenches would be to benchmark them against the NAMA proposition.
Interesting development, Sharon.
Yes.
We'll now move to that other story about the M1 motorway being turned into canal because of the floods. Sharon, what's going on down the M1?
Well, Brian, the floods have hit us. The floods have hit us left, right and all over the country. We are suffering from extensive flooding, drain pipe flooding, flooded drain pipes and storm drain flooding we have seen right across the country and indeed the Irish Sea that many storms and boats have capsized, and storms are relating on to the canals of the Grand Canal in Dublin.
Indeed, Sharon. And a reporter earlier on was mentioning something about a tsunami hitting the Iron Islands perhaps later on in the evening. Any more
Yes,
developments in
it
this
is
development story, Sharon?
Well, as you know, the Iron Islands have geographically been cut off from a natural disaster, but there's more to come. As we know, the fort of Dún Aengus was actually circular. Carbon dating done by a carbon dating geologist has found that yes, the sea has eroded during the storms of the late 1300s. More for this, we will be joined in studio, on the air, in the programme, during the show, but after the break.
Of course, Sharon, and as we all know, we wouldn't even know Dún Aengus was there unless McDonald's had opened up their store there and begun their excavations to build the foundations. Sharon, what else has McDonald's found on the Iron Islands?
Well, McDonald's has found that the sheep and the cattle are too rich and too good to be used in their burgers, as they make the burgers too thick, and the EU regulation set down by McDonald's has stated that the burgers can only be of 15% meat, and that there is in fact too much meat in the meat of the islanders, so they're having their own meat shipped in from Colombia, mixed up with their other grains and produce.
Indeed, famously, EU directives have been led by McDonald's in the last few years. We've had the Nice Treaty, the Lisbon Treaty, the rerun of the Lisbon Treaty. Now we've got Lisbon Treaty 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to look forward to in the future. McDonald's at the forefront of these Lisbon debates. Sharon, what has McDonald's been saying to you about the Lisbon Treaty 5?
Well, as you know, McDonald's are a very difficult company to deal with for PR relations. They have stated on a number of occasions that they will be moving forward to the smaller islands of the Aran Islands, and they will be moving northwards to Donegal, to the islands in Donegal, and they will be moving inwards. And if climate change continues and there is more land made available by droughts in other areas, McDonald's will be seizing the opportunity to exploit new lands created.
Very good, Sharon, there we'll leave it. Still to come, a reminder of everything you just heard, and perhaps something new. It's all up to you. You can text us on 5310555. Of course, you can Twitter us on
Bebo. Also, coming up in the programme later on, we'll be joined in studio by some of today's correspondents and yesterday's correspondents.
Right now we'll go to some of the viewers' own opinions. Seamus from Clare says, what are you talking about? Why do you keep on about this nonsense? Surely this is meant to be news.
Well, Seamus, our directors of public relations have indeed filed that report that you have sent us, and you can find your own response by logging online to www.RTE News Response General Response to General Complaints.ie. Margaret in Fermoy says that once her company pulled out of Fermoy, she can no longer be joined in Fermoy.
Well, Margaret, we can't really do much for you as you're in Fermoy, but maybe the best thing for you to do would be to move. Claire from Ballybunion says, why am I living in Ballybunion? Claire, we don't know. Sharon?
Well, I don't know why she's living in Ballybunion. Perhaps you could find some other alternative means of transport if the roads are flooded and you are stuck in Ballybunion. Moving on to international news now, the government has come out today with a to-do list for its future to-dos. It says paint the front of the door, register to notice to the RTE studios, and get the digital camera fixed.
Indeed, in their 5-step plan of action, their government's 5-step plan of government 5-step action, they've come up with several new steps and several new initiatives. One of them, of course, being for everyone to learn how to set dance. Now, Sharon, to talk more about this set dancing scandal, We're going to be joined later on in the studio by our set dancing expert, David McCullough. But until then, Sharon, maybe you can fill us in on the background to this set dancing scandal, and if you maybe elaborate a little bit more about this 5-step plan.
Well, the Cabinet has been trying to keep this one under wraps for a long time, a very long time. What with the whole world on the international stage looking at Ireland back when the Eurovision struck with its Riverdance, the government realised that there was a lot to embrace in set dancing, and that tourism would really greatly benefit from right across the board, communities, walks of life, and schools and universities, all learning to set dance. Even the politicians, we have footage of some politicians learning to set dance. I believe Willie O'D practices it regularly with his mother.
But what if this St Vincent de Paul report saying that people on social welfare would not be able to claim social welfare unless they were able to set dance? Surely this set dancing creates a barrier to people coming on the social welfare ladder.
Yes, it is quite a barrier, but as like any other barriers, there are loopholes, and with all good loopholes, all it takes is a simple finding out of the means and the measures to find the loophole and break down the barriers. It's very simple, and our one listener said that if you almost, now she didn't use the word bribe, I would paraphrase, she said that all she had to do was bring in her local CWO and her WOCW some hazelnuts, and that worked.
As we all know, hazelnuts can get you pretty much anything in this country. All we have to do is look at the recent election of Fianna Fáil to see what hazelnuts can do. Sharon, maybe for more of this hazelnut, set dancing, Fianna Fáil triangle, the Fianna Fáil hazelnut election triangle it's called. We could talk maybe perhaps later on to the author of the book, Fianna Fáil and Hazel might be joining us in the studio. Sharon, maybe you could give us a bit more elaboration on this hazelnut scandal, this Fianna Fáil hazelnut triangle.
What Hazel McHazel has said in her proposal, her introduction rather, to the book, with the foreword written by Adele McAllister of RTÉ News, and she's making the point in the book, she goes into great detail in the book, that basically because the IWO and the OWI and the forestation parks and the national parks in conjunction with Coillte